Good morning, everybody. Welcome in to the Week 14 edition of the Establish the Run First Look Show. That is right. We are at the final week of most regular season fantasy leagues, of the best ball regular season. I know some formats like Scott Fishbowl and main events are already now in the playoffs and rolling. Really crazy that we are December football just up and rolling. And as I always say, the season goes by in the blink of an eye. And hope you all have been enjoying it while it's here. It's been a crazy one, right? We don't have any surefire MVP candidate at this point. The injuries galore. We get another quarterback go down last night, and Trevor Lawrence. So Kenny Pickett go down this week. So really crazy stuff. Let's hope that the rest of the season finishes strong for all of our pockets, as well as all of our entertainment and the health of all these players. That said, let's set the table. And if you're new here, basically the point of this show is to simply get a first read on the DraftKings main slate. We do this Tuesday morning before we really have any kind of ownership information, any deep dive analysis, anything like that. Just a first gut reaction to pricing, players, etc. Rapid fire style, trying to start position our minds from one slate to the next. We will go position by position. And before I like to dive into quarterback, I just like to set the table for you all. So we have an 11-game main slate here this Sunday. That is due to the fact that there are still somehow two teams with buys in Week 14. That is Washington and Arizona, which does have some consequences, I would say, for fantasy. And I know a lot of my best ball teams, for example, are Sam Howell teams. So something to keep in mind there. So Washington, Arizona off the slate. And then Thursday night, we got a real barn burner. It's going to be one of the best games I've ever watched. And that is Bailey Zappi going into the Pittsburgh Steelers to face Mitch Trubisky. So really excited for that one. And then Sunday night, actually excited for Eagles Cowboys, maybe one of the biggest games of the year so far. Been a lot of these fun NFC matchups in prime time in recent weeks. So that's Sunday night. And then for some reason that I don't really know the answer to, we have a doubleheader Monday night football. Tennessee Titans at Dolphins. Dolphins obviously always a big fantasy team to consider. So no Tyreek Hill on this main slate for you all. And then Packers at Giants. Don't worry, folks. The NFL schedule makers did it for you once again. My New York Football Giants got on primetime, as I know all of you have been very excited for them to be back. You missed them over the last couple of weeks. So that kind of sets the slate. So that leaves us with an 11-game main slate. One that does not have that exciting of environments, if I'm being honest. We have one game that gets up around 47.5, 48 over under, and that is Bills Chiefs. Obviously, that's an exciting one, right? Bills Chiefs, some classic games over the last handful of years. Of course, the playoff game from 2 years ago with Patrick Mahomes with 30 seconds left or whatever it was, and Gabe Davis 55 DraftKings points. So this game's in KC. Both these teams need this one now. I mean, the Bills still more than the Chiefs, but the Chiefs coming off that loss, that's prime time. So that's going to be your game that probably will have a ton of chalk around it, especially because, again, there's not much here as far as game environments to attack. So, I think that's going to be one that you want to look at. From there, you kind of jump all the way down to a couple 43s, right? Rams, Ravens is 43. Broncos, Chargers is right around 43. From a team total perspective, it is the San Francisco 49ers, however, that have by far the highest team total on this slate with a almost 29, 28.5, 29 against the Seahawks. And I guess that one's a 46.5 game total. So that will be our second highest and the one that I think a lot of people will attack as well. So the Niners, I always say when you look at a score up near 30 on implied totals, you don't like to ignore those offenses. Obviously, that was the Dolphins last week. Tyreek Hill did take care of business there. So the Niners this week, you have the Chiefs are kind of around 25 implied team total hosting Buffalo. The Ravens also implied 25, with their matchup with the Rams. The Chargers are around 23 with Denver. The Bills are right around 23 as well. So nothing that like jumps off the page other than that Niners 29. I guess this Bills Chiefs game in general at 47.5. So, once again, an interesting puzzle to try to solve here without game environments that pop off the page. So let's jump in to the quarterback position, starting with those two quarterbacks in that game of the week, and that's Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. Allen, I always talk about how I think he's got the best ceiling in fantasy football, at least from the quarterback position. That doesn't change for me here, but going into Kansas City against a good Chiefs defense, not the most natural spot. Jordan Love did have some success against this Chiefs team on Sunday night, but that was in Lambeau. Now they're coming off this loss. I do think he's going to have to throw a lot. I think there's a big ceiling in there, but I do think if I'm attacking this game, I probably want the Mahomes side. The downside of Mahomes is twofold. One, supporting cast. It's been garbage. Everyone except Travis Kelce, and even Kelce's showing his age, right? Has been really bad. They have an unwillingness to use Rashee Rice more that I don't understand. And it's hard for him to put up major ceiling games with that kind of supporting cast. He is dropping back enough, though, right? He's dropped for over 30 passes every single game this year. He's been over 40 multiple times. But he has not had over 30 points since that Week 7 game against the Chargers. This is a game environment that I could see him getting there. But something to consider for sure. Lamar coming off the bye, you got to like that. They're playing a Rams team that just gave up like 18 DraftKings points to Joe Flacco. I definitely think Lamar is a very interesting play at home. I mentioned they have a second or third highest team total on the slate. I think he's a very good play that might get lost in the cracks. I'm curious where ownership will condense on this slate. I've liked attacking CJ Stroud week in, week out, even when he's gotten up here in price. And now they did lower him back down to 7-6, I think, due to a down game from a DraftKings perspective and only 16 points, and B, going into East Rutherford to face the Jets on the road. Jets, obviously a terrible football team, still have a good defense. This is a tough spot for the rookie, just lost Tank Dell. I don't think I'm attacking CJ Stroud this week. Justin Herbert, I don't know, maybe no one that more like disappointing to me than this Chargers offense. Obviously been really unlucky with the Mike Williams injuries, Josh Palmer injury, etc. But man, and I get the Patriots have a great defense. I don't know how you go in and win that game 6-0. You score 8 points. I only had 15 the game before that. He had 7 against the Jets. So in tough matchups, this isn't the best spot. And I do think the Broncos, again, since that win against the Chiefs second half of the year, they've been a much better team, much better defense. I was wondering if some of that was smoke and mirrors. This game against Houston, they gave up 22 points, but you saw Stroud only had 16 points. So I don't know what kind of ceiling's in there, and it's like, yeah, they're at home. Maybe we get the nice weather, but a home game for the Chargers is always an away game too. Fields was the cover boy of this video. Got to like what you see out of him since coming back. Obviously that game against the Vikings last Monday night was ugly to say the least, but he did drop back 37 times, which you love to see. Still ran the ball 12 times, did lose 2 fumbles, so that made it a little bit tougher on him. But this exact same matchup was 2 weeks ago in Detroit, and he put up 20, almost 25 DraftKings points, right? And that's 100 yards on the ground. Did throw for a touchdown. Now they're at home. The Lions defense has been really bad the second half of the year. They're giving up a ton of big games. He's under 7K for one of the few quarterbacks that I think realistically has a strong 30-point case this week. Yeah, Pete saying Fields chalk in the chat. I wouldn't be surprised at all if that's the case, but I did think he was worthy of the cover boy for the thumbnail on this video. We won't talk about Trevor Lawrence, but even so, whoever the Jaguars quarterback is, I don't think you're playing them going into Cleveland. Shouts to Brock Purdy, our now MVP favorite on the season. Really impressive win, obviously, going into Philadelphia, 42-19. Was the chalk cash quarterback last week too, and it's always tough when you fade the cash quarterback when they score 30 points, which is kind of what I did on the main slate. I thought he was a fine play, but 32.5, 4 touchdowns, 314 yards for Brock Purdy. I mean, the Eagles' pass defense has been one we get thrown on all year, but that was a really impressive performance at only 6,100. Again, one of the, not as somebody that you instinctually think is a ceiling player, but certainly has shown a floor ceiling combination. Yeah, that was his highest score of the year. Don't get me wrong, but we saw a 26 in there, a 29, and a bunch in the 23, 24 range. You'll take that when it's still low 6s. Brock Purdy is a very solid DFS contributor at this point, and at home against Seattle, I'm not at all concerned. Goff, we like home Goff better than road Goff. Second half of the season Goff has not been good as early season Goff, and then you go into a Chicago team where maybe weather's bad, where the Bears defense has been much, much better, and this does not seem like a Goff spot to me. If I'm playing a quarterback from that game, I want to find the $400 to get to Justin Fields. Stafford, I don't think you're not playing going into Baltimore, but shout out to him for his back-to-back 20-point DraftKings games. Dobbs, who knows? We haven't even gotten any word about what they're going to do with their quarterback situation, but I don't think he's making your pool this week. I guess Russell Wilson can make your pool. It's a good matchup with the Chargers, but even in these spots where over the last 6 weeks where they've had a lot of wins and, they've been doing what they had to do through the air, et cetera. He's running, 8 to 10 times again. He's still really not capping over 20 points. It was earlier in the season when they had to chuck a lot, which is not what Sean Payton wanted to do. They want him to be a game manager and, not play outside of himself. That was when he was getting into the 20s and 30s. Second half of the year, he's been capped out at 18. That's not a play that I'm really excited about. Geno, not really either. Really awesome game to see him go into Dallas on that Thursday night game and just dominate 330 yards, 3 touchdowns. That was a really fun back and forth battle. I do not see this going that way. Now, it does have the second highest over-under on the week with 46. So if you think they can push and you really want exposure to a lot of Seahawks pieces, that's fine. But usually I like to do that when you have an 8,000 quarterback and the opponent, like the Sam Howell, Tua Tagovailoa thing from this past week. That was a perfect example of that, where I didn't mind attacking Sam Howell as if he was Tua and just say, I need the salary savings. I want to attack this game. So I was going to say, if you need $1,000 or $800, I guess, and you really want to double, McCaffrey and somebody else with one Seahawk, you could do that with Geno instead of Purdy, but I don't think it's as clean of a spot as when you get a really cheap, high ceiling quarterback against a super expensive one in a good environment. But that is something I like to do, just something to think about in general. Probably not this spot particularly, but something in general. Jameis Winston's probably getting the start here, and I think that's very intriguing at home against Carolina. Definitely better for this offense as a whole. So if you want to save money there, I'm gonna keep riding the Gardner Minshew train here as my cheap quarterback of choice. First of all, he goes out there, he gets wins. He's not afraid to drop back. Jonathan Taylor's still out. He got 302 against Tennessee. This is a very good matchup against Cincinnati here. In Cincinnati, who's had a rough defense for most of this year. Trevor Lawrence had a great game last night before he went down. He could have probably eclipsed 30 DraftKings points again. So I definitely like Minshew as a spend down choice this week. From there, Jake Browning showed a lot last night. If you want to throw him in your player pool, 37 dropbacks, 32 of 37, 354 yards, and a touchdown. This matchup with the Colts is middle of the road, but I think you can go there. So there's definitely some spend down options for you this week. Quarterback certainly a choose your own adventure week. If you want to play mid-tier, if you want to play expensive, if you want to play cheap, I can certainly see it. I think it's one of those where I'd have a tough time whittling down my player pool. I probably want the top 3 guys. Maybe I get a sprinkle of Herbert. Definitely want some Fields, want some Purdy. And then I'm going into the guys below Geno. So Winston, Minshew, perhaps Browning. So you get a little sprinkle of each tier. And I think that is an interesting way to play it. Opposite of last week, where running backs are the really high ceiling plays and great matchups, where wide receivers are this last week, it's running backs this week. So we have Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, Austin Eckler, all on this slate, all placing top 5 matchups for running backs. CMC gets the Seahawks. You got to like that. 2 weeks ago, had this exact same matchup on Thanksgiving night, and we all remember what he did there, right? 19 for 114 on the ground, 2 receiving touchdowns, add another 5 for 25 through the air, just for a casual 34 points, which I always say he's a walking 20 points when he just suits up, which he did again in a tough matchup with Philly, right? Could have had a bigger game, was 7 yards away from the bonus, and he still had almost 22.5 DraftKings points. Christian McCaffrey is an excellent play. I'd imagine he's going to be very popular this week in this game, but he's an excellent play. Kamara had a great game, was a really good tournament play, being underutilized at 8-2 with Carr back under the fold in a good matchup with Detroit. I think I actually like him a little bit less here, not because I don't love the role and the matchup. I like both those things, but let's not underestimate Jameis Winston starting over Derek Carr and what that means for Alvin Kamara's floor ceiling combo, because we have check down Derek Carley versus gunslinger Jameis Winston, who wants to push the ball downfield. I do not think we're getting these consistent 4 through 13 catches or whatever that we get with Derek Carr and Alvin Kamara. Now, I'm not fading it because I think he could easily run in for a bunch of touchdowns. It's a good matchup for sure against a team that, gave up to what they needed to against Rachaad White, who's been, really solid as well. And teams have not been afraid to run against Carolina all year. They've been a run funnel. But just saying, if it's expensive 8-2, and if you think you're getting the same pass catching role, assuming Jameis is in, I would think again. Don't think it's a bad play. Just wanted to point that out. Austin Eckler, talk about a squeaky wheel narrative. You get the Broncos. Denver again. They're still rating by DraftKings metric as the 32nd ranked run D. That's how bad they were for like the first 5-6 weeks of the season. I don't think they've been as bad since then. Damian Pierce did end up in the end zone this past week, and I think you could still run against this team. But does Austin Eckler have juice left is the question. DraftKings is making you challenge that thought because they tank his price, $800. So 700, whatever. That's 7-6 for Austin Eckler at home against the Broncos is a very good price. I'm really curious where ownership comes in here. He has not been the same player this season as he was in seasons past. And I don't know if it's a Kellen Moore thing. I don't know if it's a Keenan Allen has taken over as the safety blanket check down piece over Austin Eckler, but it's not the same player. I'm willing to take shots here, but a lot of shots because it's really cheap and it's a great matchup. And I could see him breaking out for a big game, but I understand the issues with Eckler. Chronic says he's old. Maybe he's a hashtag old. I don't know. Maybe age model's gotten the best. So maybe he's ready just to be a full-time fantasy analyst. I don't know. Kyren Williams, even in a bad matchup with the Browns, 21 carries, 88 yards, gets that garbage time touchdown at the end, still has 3 catches through the air. The guy has one of the best roles you could possibly ask for, and DraftKings is pricing him pretty much as such. He has the CMC role, 1,900 less than CMC. Not as good of a player as CMC, and certainly a tougher matchup this week, but just something to consider. He is somebody that I want to be throwing in tournament pools every single week. Don't care about matchup. Think he's going to get used amazingly well. JT's still out, so we'll talk about Moss in a little bit here. ETN last night, I'm surprised they kind of stopped using him as much. Only ended up having 11 carries total for 45 yards. Maybe they were limiting his work a little bit because of the rib injury, but did find the end zone and had 4 catches through the air. So he got back up towards like his 18 points. Again, if at this, when you eclipse 7K, you're going to want to be more where he was weeks 4 through or 5 through 8, which was 23 through 40. That's still in there for him, but this is a very tough matchup against the Browns. Plus, who knows what's going on with the quarterback. I think it's probably a fade for me on ETN this week. Josh Jacobs off the bye. Certainly, I think the Antonio Pierce of it all has been a good thing for him. They really want to feed him the rock. Talk about getting him over the century mark every game they can. 25 points in that game against Kansas City before the bye. They're at home against the Vikings. Rashawn Johnson looked pretty good against this Vikings team last time we saw them, so I don't mind attacking Josh Jacobs. Rashad White has been one of the steadiest players in fantasy, but I came to this realization the other day when I played him in a couple of tournament lineups. Is Rashad White a tournament player? Like, yeah, week 9 against Houston, he had 28 points, and you love that. You absolutely love that. But I think he's been so freaking consistent between 15 and 19, and now he's up to 6-8. Like, you need 25, and yeah, he's done it once, and maybe he could do it again. I don't dislike it, but this is not the best spot going into Atlanta. And with the priced up. So probably off Rashad White a little bit this week. Pacheco was great before he was tossed at the end of the game. Back-to-back now games of mid-20s. I like these types of players in December football, which is gritty, hard-running, guys that just dominate the cold weather. We've seen this from Derrick Henry forever. Pacheco runs so freaking hard. It's somebody that I think will continue to put up big scores at this time of the season. So I do like Pacheco quite a bit. Gibbs and Montgomery, I think, are kind of back to that point where they might be canceling each other out a little bit. Montgomery had the 18 carries. Gibbs is still going to have his role and super efficient. Both guys make your tournament pool, but that's kind of about it where I'm at with them. Bijan, I expected more against the Jets because you had been able to run on the Jets this season, but 18 of 53, nothing going for Bijan. But then they lower him to 200, so he's still too cheap in my opinion because the role's still there right now for Bijan. Matchups just whatever, it's fine. You'd rather pass against Tampa, but it's fine. Talked about Montgomery already. I think Kenneth Walker is going to be back, but keep an eye there. Breece Hall, they were, easing in. He's got a hamstring thing. Jets can't do anything. He's fine if you want to throw him in your player pool. Mixon last night had a big game, 2 touchdowns, but even so, and this is the thing with Mixon. I said this to Cody on the Showdown show yesterday. Like, he was underpriced for Showdown. He was $7K for Showdown, which was really cheap. For the role he has. He's got an elite role, and you saw it again last night, right? He had 25 total touches, including 6 catches for 50 yards, 68 yards on the ground, and 2 touchdowns. It's almost 30 DraftKings points. That's his best game of the year. But you like that role. This matchup with Indianapolis is a good one. He's 6-1. I think he's going to have some ownership this week, especially if Jake Browning is showing that he can, carry this offense a little bit. I think he's going to be a pretty good play. You got James Cook at 6K against KC. I would throw him in any correlation pieces there. Baltimore is a little bit of a three-headed monster now at this point. I'm a little scared there. Gus Edwards has shown that he, could score a bazillion touchdowns, so you could probably be in your MME pool, but that's about it. Javonte Williams, it's a solid matchup with the Chargers, but has not necessarily shown much of a ceiling, but he's cheap enough to keep going back to that well. Got to look at the split between Singletary and Pierce this last week. Certainly looked like Pierce ate in more. I know 2 weeks ago it was still a big Singletary 49-11. Mentioned the Jets did a good job shutting down Bijan, but overall they've had a rough time against the run. You got Jerome Ford in that same matchup that Joe Mixon exploited last night. Now he's splitting with Kareem Hunt, but I do like Ford, and he's been solid floor as well. The Vikings backs, I don't really want to get into Madison very much. It's a pretty good matchup, but I just don't know what kind of ceilings there. We'll see again, mentioned on the Seattle running backs. We'll see what's going on there. Then the Chicago guys, I think, are guys you can consider. Roschon Johnson really took over as that lead back on last Monday Night Football. So, we could go from yesterday. So, at 4-9, this is definitely a player you can attack. We'll see if Deonta Foreman's back. We'll see if that's, if he is, you still have 3 guys that are getting fed there. So that's a little bit scary, but definitely something to consider. All right, spent a lot of time on running back this week because I think there's a ton. Let's go quickly through receivers here. Diggs, your top option against the Chiefs. Not an easy matchup against L'Jarius Sneed and the Chiefs for Stephon Diggs, but coming off the bye, obviously extra motivated in this spot. Don't mind going there, but probably want him in my game stacks more than the one-off play. Keenan Allen, first down game in who knows how long. Still cracked double-digit points, but barely at 10. Matchup with Denver here. I don't mind going to it at all. I think it's fine. They've lowered his price $400. Justin Jefferson's going to be back. You're going to get him at 8.5 against a Raiders team. I'm assuming he's going to be completely fine. Now, the amount that Josh Dobbs or Jaron Hall, whoever started a quarterback, can get him the balls remains to be seen. But I like to bank on talent here. Like we saw with Jamar Chase going into that game last night with Browning. 8.5 for Justin Jefferson's like $1,000 discount. So I don't mind attacking Jefferson with fresh legs at all, actually. Amon-Ra St. Brown, just steady Eddie, did have a little bit of a down game here, but found the end zone to kind of save his day a little bit. I don't mind the spot. He had 21 points against the Bears there in week 11. Mike Evans, really maybe the most impressive fantasy season to me. I'm not kidding. What he's doing this year, which is maybe his best overall season so far, because he's dominating target share as well with Baker Mayfield on a bad offense, is just remarkable. 4 straight games between 9 and 12 targets, at least according to DraftKings. Has had a touchdown in every single one of those games. 5 touchdowns total in that time. Has been between 25 and 32 points 3 out of those 4 games. It's amazing what Mike Evans is doing. Really amazing. He had 20 points against the Falcons last time they played. He had 6 for 82 and a touchdown through the air. Now he's priced up to 7.7. That was what he was last week too, and he was optimal. So something to consider. Jamar Chase way too cheap because they were baking in the Jake Browning of it all, and the prices come out before Monday Night Football. I'd imagine he'll get some ownership and some steam here. They really figured out how to keep him the focal point of the offense. Him and Jake Browning had a clear connection. Shout out to Cody Main for flag punting Jamar last night. I flagged Browning, said, hey, go to that combination. Hope you all did, because Chase with Browning was an optimal combination for showdown last night. Certainly like him at home against the Colts at only 7.6. Nico, very clearly the wide receiver 1 now with Tank Dell down, been excellent this season. But this is a really tough spot against the Jets. Probably not going to Nico Collins very much at full price. He's more expensive than, for example, Devontae Adams, who also somewhat like Austin Eckler, like squeaky wheel narrative here, has not had a big game since the very beginning of the season. Was that week 3? And, coming off the bye, pretty good matchup. I do like Devontae Adams at only 7.5, which is a big discount for Devontae Adams ceiling. I like him quite a bit. I think I'll take some shots here on Devontae Adams in tournaments this week. Cooper Kupp also all the way down to 7.4. Did have 8 targets and a touchdown last week. Puka went down for a little bit, though. I think that the juice just isn't here for Kupp. Now, he's cheap enough. You can keep taking some shots. Not an easy matchup going into Baltimore, though. Michael Pittman's just like a full-point PPR player's dream at this point. Another 11 for 105 and a touchdown. And I mentioned Minshew. Like, Minshew is a capable supporter of talented fantasy receivers, right? Pittman and Downs have both had value this year, and it's a very condensed offense. Like, that's where the ball is going. Although we saw Alec Pierce, really break out last game, and I don't think that's sticky. I think that's kind of matchup stuff, the way he was getting open. But I guess that's something to consider. We'll see where he's projecting this week. But Pittman and Downs, I think you can consider totally once again. If you want to attack this Indy Cincy game, I think it's a little bit sneaky. Puka's probably too cheap for what we just saw. He left the game with a ribs injury. He's already over 1,000 yards on the season. One of the better, more improbable rookie seasons I can remember. But, again, tough matchup going into Baltimore. Should make your player pool. Though Olave, I think he'll benefit greatly by having Jameis out there. He's been kind of cooking recently, 3 straight games, right around 20 points. I could see him easily getting a 30-point game soon. 7K is probably right. Ayuk too cheap, though, at 6'9". They bring him down from 7-2 for some reason, I guess just because he was like middle of the road with his 5 for 46 and a touchdown. But him and Debo, both basically the same price. Debo now has had back-to-back games of Debo weeks, but it's not even like the volume's there for Debo. He's just so efficient on those touches. And that's always the thing with Debo, right? Like he's really high touchdown equity, but I want to just keep attacking Ayuk here. Like we just saw what CD did to this team, Seattle. I think Ayuk's a great play. Metcalf also coming off the best game of his career, maybe best game of the season by far. Going into San Francisco here, not the easiest spot, but you have been able to throw on the Niners a little bit, so I don't mind attacking Metcalf, especially in correlation on as a bring back or whatever there. DJ Moore has been awesome with Justin Fields. Same spot 2 weeks ago, I had 7 for 96 in this game. Could have been 4 yards away from the bonus. So, like, I really like DJ Moore at only 6'5". I think that's a good play. This is all to say. This is a week where you have a lot of options all up and down the board. You got Ridley. We'll see if Kirk's out. That's a tough matchup in Cleveland. Thielen, I would like him more on the other side of New Orleans stuff, but he's kind of come crashing back down to earth since his big beginning of the season. Sutton just found the end zone again. That's all this guy does is score touchdowns this year. 9 touchdowns. Pretty good matchup for him. Don't think a ceiling's really there for him or Judy at this point, but, like, again, we're talking small sample, like 12 games of Russ Wilson. I just think the way they want to play is more run-heavy game management style. If the Chargers can push them this week, you should be embarrassed scoring 6 points last week, then maybe you can really get into Sutton Judy a little bit. Again, I'm not going to really mention on Kirk. For Godwin, I just want Evans every time I'm playing a Bucs receiver at this point. Higgins came back last night. Didn't do too much, but only 5,900 now on a main slate. I think you could attack it in tournaments. Amari Cooper, concussion protocol, we'll have to wait and see there. But again, Joe Flacco really good for this offense. Don't mind the matchup here with Jags. So if you want to attack some Browns pass catchers, I would completely understand. Elijah Moore, had 12 targets last week. So, he's still way under 5K. He'll probably be back on my cheap wide receiver volume column. Gabe Davis, always a solid 1 week best ball type play, spike week guy against KC. You're going to want some action there. Zay Flowers, I've questioned the ceiling for a long time, did finally eclipse 20 points there. I'm finding 2 touchdowns, 1 on the ground, 1 in the air. I just think he's okay. At 5'7", he's cheap enough you could consider. Garrett Wilson is all the way down in the dumps at 5'5". I don't even know who's starting for them at quarterback. I think you can consider him in like MME pools, but that's about it. Rashee Rice, again, I just want to see them use him more. By far the best receiver on this team. I think he's a great play this week. I'm assuming he'll have some chalk, but in this matchup, if you're attacking it, I want Rashee Rice a lot of the time. Again, Addison is now probably back into no man's land with the quarterback situation and with Jefferson back. Already talked about Downs, talked about Judy. And from there, we're under 5K. So something to consider. Okay, let's go quickly into tight end. Travis Kelce, still found his way over 10 points, but again, you're paying like premium receiver prices on Kelce. He has not been the same player this year. Does have that 39 ball in his bag. They're back home. Huge game against Buffalo. We'll see if Taylor Swift's in attendance. Kidding, not kidding, whatever. 7-8. Get in where you fit in. Want him in my Chiefs Bills stuff when I can get some exposure, but it's tough to pay 7-8 for a tight end. Laporta, best rookie tight end season I can remember. 9 for 140 and a touchdown last week against New Orleans. Pretty good spot here against the Bears. 6-1, again, want him in correlation pieces. Hawkinson, curious to see how he gets hit with Jefferson coming back, but has been a real target hog in a lot of ways. Josh Dobbs has certainly liked him. Assuming Dobbs is starting again, I don't mind attacking Hawk. Kittle, same thing. Again, I want to just mix and match the tight ends and receivers and Christian McCaffrey for the Niners. I want exposure to all 4 of those guys. Plenty of exposure every week. Some of it's matchup based. He didn't do too much in this same spot against Seattle, but they had that game in hand. It was a Christian McCaffrey show. I could see him having a big game here. Kincaid, also, again, not the easiest matchup against the Chiefs, but he's really established himself as a big weapon on that Bills offense. Taysom Hill, I don't know if I like him more or less with Jameis being in there. The way they price him up is just not someone that I feel comfortable attacking given the role. Yeah, again, someone with super high touchdown equity as well. But at 5'4", he's got these 20s in his bag for sure. But I like doing that in the 4s, not mid-5s. That's a tough click. We'll see if Dalton Schultz is available. It's a tough matchup against the Jets. Evan Ingram finally hit pay dirt last night, found the end zone, 9 for 82, and a touchdown. We knew that touchdown was coming for him eventually. tougher matchup here with Cleveland, and we don't know who the quarterback is. So no, thank you. Komet, like Komet in this Detroit Bears game that I want to attack a little bit. I think he's pretty good. Mentioned Njoku, he had 6 targets even under Flacco, but I think I'd rather the receivers. Pitts, I think, had 50 yards. Wow, congratulations, Kyle Pitts. And then Isaiah Likely certainly is going to be a really good play. Way too cheap at 3,500 for the role, for the Mark Andrews role. From here, you just got a bunch of punts you can take shots on. We'll see if Schultz is out again. I'm sure Brevin Jordan will be popular again. Kate Naughton has a pretty good matchup here. We'll see what the Chargers tight end situation is. Tyler Conklin always sits like right at 3K and has a pretty good matchup. So interesting week, really interesting week. Right at 30 minutes. I'm going to get out of here there. Hopefully we started getting the wheels churning here for week 14. I kind of like it at first glance. I think there's a lot of different directions you can go if you have conviction on certain games, certain teams, certain styles of construction. I think you can get unique pretty fast here. So we'll see how ownership and all the content shakes out for you this week. I wish you all the best of luck. We'll be back throughout the week with everything you need to know on establishthorun.com for this fun week 14. I wish you all the best of luck in your final weeks of season long, in best ball, in main events, in DFS, in life, whatever you got going on this fine December 5th. I wish you all the best of luck. Thank you so much for tuning in. I will be back next week for another first look. Good luck, everyone.